Chapter 43, Much Ado About Alicorns, Part 1. Never put off till tomorrow what may be done day after tomorrow just as well. Mark Twain. 12 o'clock, December 25, 2015, Royal Audience Chamber, Canterlot. Due to her nature, Princess Celestia's perception of time was uniquely different than those that lived within her kingdom. Luna came close to the frame of mind that the Solar Princess held, though her dalliances into the dreams of the common folks tended to keep her perspective closer to that of the mortal than the immortal. Centuries could and had passed for Celestia with very little effort, to the point where time was seemingly something that happened to other creatures and she was exempt from it. It was that frame of mind that the Solar Princess sorely missed. Over the past 24 hours Celestia had been briefed by her guard captains of the current situation, reassured Luna and Twilight that she was completely recovered before demanding that they both take a well-earned rest, held a conference with the other leaders present in Canterlot, which included a rather frustrating encounter with a changeling foal claiming to speak for Chrysalis, convened with her most skilled mages to try and locate discord, before finally opening court to the public. To add an element of normalcy back into the lives of those living in the capital. Only 24 hours had passed, but to Princess Celestia it felt closer to a year and a half. The sensation was irritating. Relief came in the form of a familiar face that approached the throne, though it was clouded with more than a little guilt and concern. Cadance, dear, if you wanted to speak with me then you should have simply sent a messenger, Celestia said as she stood and descended from her elevated seat. A quick glance to the door guards was all that was needed to seal the audience chamber. Such an action would have normally elicited more than a few grumbles from those still waiting in line outside the doors, but a solemn silence was all that met Celestia's ears before the doors slid shut. The concerns of the citizens are more important than me simply stopping by to say hello, Cadance replied. The words held the same humble nature that had been the trademark of the younger princess, and her voice almost matched what the elder remembered. Princess Cadance had been a shining example of everything that Celestia had wanted for the future of Equestria so as not to repeat her own mistakes. Empathetic and kind, talented and confident, capable of leading her ponies to a brighter future without resorting to heavy-hoofed tyranny. And while Celestia had slept, Cadance had sacrificed herself to save her people, and lost too much in the process. While the younger princess wore clothing and a scarf that hid the worst of what had been done to her, it had taken a single glance from Celestia to know just how badly her adopted niece had been tortured. Only time would tell just how much of the kind pony's character had survived. Auntie, I think you're melting the floor. The comment snapped Celestia out of her analysis, and she spared a single glance down to the marble floor. The air wavered with heat and lifting her hooves revealed faint indentations seared into its surface. Control, control, I must exercise more control. One mistake with my power and some pony could die. Every pony could die, Celestia thought as she cleared her throat. She motioned to the cushioned seats positioned by the windows and abruptly changed the subject. Come and sit with me, Cadance. You must have been on your hooves for more than an hour waiting for your audience. The younger princess's small nod and lack of humble refusal of the offer was perhaps more telling of the effort it took her to keep standing than any amount of words would. Only when she was suitably seated did Cadance finally relax. After a moment, she fixed Celestia with a look before finding her voice. I know the impulse for self-blame is hard to overcome, and it's quite easy to focus that into anger. You were like this after my wedding, I recognized the signs even before you wanted to brand the floor with your hooves. I accept your empathy for what happened but it wasn't your fault. The immediate denial died before it could be voiced, and Celestia leveled a concerned eye towards the younger princess. She's more assertive than before, that is certain. She thought as Cadance returned the look and held her gaze. Then, perhaps I will simply state that I am grateful that you are here. Her gaze fell to the prosthetics that were mostly hidden by Cadance's dress, before meeting the younger princess's eyes again. How are our subjects handling the recent developments? Celestia asked, and the subject change was rewarded with a smile from Cadance. Improving. I wasn't present in the capital for most of it, but I've been told that the situation became rather dire before turning around. The most recent developments have only built on the positive momentum, the younger princess explained, a coy smile appearing on her face. The recapture of High Peak and the return of the Myrmidons has Griffins in extremely high spirits, and rumors of little Alvar's role in the battle in the Minnan Isles have all but solidified support for the young king with his people. When things settle down, there won't be any succession skirmishes for the throne at High Peak. Celestia nodded in agreement at the sentiment, pausing for just a moment to summon a small teapot and a pair of cups. Alvar, the youngest of Gerhardt's hatchlings. Never would I have thought that the title of High Talon would come to rest upon the wings of one that fate had seemingly been content to forget, she mused as she used her telekinesis to pour a measure of tea into the cups before offering one to Cadance. Young Alvar seems to have risen gloriously to the challenge of his position, Celestia commented as she sipped from her cup. I've even overheard talk from the Griffin guards that he's earned the right to a rubric for his name. Reclaimer seems to be the most popular title, but I think Alvar the Avenger has a bit more of a ring to it. The restrained giggle from Cadance was a relief to hear for the elder princess. The young king seems to be attempting to do everything within his power to avoid the attention. If he can maintain his humble nature, I imagine he'll have quite a calming effect on the empire in general. She took a sip from her own cup, only for her eyes to widen and take a second sip. This tea is rather good. Have you been hoarding some ancient stash of legendary tea leaves for 1,000 years or something? The bakers that lived in Ponyville brewed this for me. I must confess to having acquired a great thirst for it since I woke, Celestia corrected, taking another draw of the tea before setting the cup down on the saucer. What of the Minotaurs? I spoke with Asterion earlier and he was practically magnanimous. Seeing that bull in any other mood than surly or irritated was rather jarring. I think he has a right to a good mood, after all he was there to witness something that has never happened before for his people, Cadance replied, pausing for effect before continuing. The Council of Consensus reached a unanimous decision. The explanation had been timed perfectly, and Celestia nearly did a spit take with her tea. Unanimous? As in no dissenting opinions or members abstaining. When the younger princess nodded, Celestia shook her head in disbelief. Truly strange times we live in. If ever there was an understatement, Auntie, that would be it, Cadance smirked. The Council of Consensus has voted in favor of total support for the war effort, abandoning their previous stance of limited support and isolationism. It's a stance that Asterion has fought to change since the first meeting here in Canterlot to discuss the invasion. A wise choice, given the likely outcome of the alternatives. Celestia paused before addressing the proverbial elephant in the room. And what of the humans? I must confess to being just a little bit on the back hoof regarding them, considering I don't have centuries of history to predict their behavior. The smirk on Cadance's face held just a single ounce of mischief but quickly vanished behind her teacup. The majority are in high spirits after the most recent victories. They're attributing their relatively low number of losses due to Luna's planning and intervention at High Peak. The ones that have been here the longest are a bit more wary. The lack of activity from the invaders since my rescue is something that they consider rather ominous. Though it's not all grim and serious though. Oh? Celestia asked with an arched eyebrow. Well, not counting my own circumstances, Cadance began, lifting one prosthetic hoof to accentuate the point, I would dare say that the humans are proving themselves to be valuable friends personally as well as allies for the future. It's my understanding that Skybolt from your Dusk Guard has been comparing notes with her human equivalent that she met during their time on Earth, so I expect you might soon see a requisition order to create a successor to the Hummingbird as a joint project with Chief Engineer Shen. I suspect our little Twilight might have found her calling as well in teaching the humans about magic. They're just now learning about it, and a rather startling number of them are discovering a capacity for it. I suspect she wants to set up some sort of school on Earth once this invasion is done, so she can teach them like she did her special human during her time there. I did also want to speak to you regarding an arrangement I had hoped to make for the future, once the current conflict is settled. I would be thrilled to hear about what you have in mind, Cadance, Celestia answered sincerely. Planning for the future rather than dwelling on the past, this is the Cadance I was afraid had been taken from us, the elder princess thought, and she had every intention of letting the younger Alicorn explain herself, but the full meaning of Cadance's statements finally processed in her mind. What? What? Came Cadance's calm reply. It took a monumental amount of effort for Celestia to stop from bursting into flame. What did you just say? She growled. Cadance paused long enough to take a sip of her tea. I said, what? An eyebrow twitch developed in addition to Celestia's sudden urge to spontaneously combust. Before that. About Twilight. The smile that Cadance adopted was definitely filled with mischief. Oh yes, her school. I think she's intending to take inspiration from you in that regard. She wants to name it Twilight Sparkle's School for Gifted Humans or something. The moon awaits you if you do not answer the question you know I'm asking, Cadance dear. The grin devolved into a pout. You know, you like to tease every pony on occasion, but you're terrible about getting teased yourself. The younger princess paused to give Celestia a level stare. You've trusted your faithful student to handle things that no pony has had to face in an age. Is it so alarming that she's experiencing something that literally every pony faces at least once in their lives? You're the first pony she will come to for help with a dire cosmic threat or a magical conundrum, but her family and friends are in a better place to offer her help on this kind of personal matter. Please, Celestia, trust us to watch out for her and do what's necessary should something happen. A long moment passed as Celestia studied her niece. It seems more than I had imagined has changed while I slept, she stated slowly. Were you always so wise, but simply reluctant to share? If nothing else, I've had a long time to think and regret what was left unsaid, Cadance replied quietly, the implications needing no explanation. Celestia drew in a deep breath and slowly let it out as her knee-jerk protectiveness wrestled with Cadance's words. This will take some getting used to. I apologize for straying from our earlier topic, she finally said, her composure regained. You were about to explain something you had in mind for the future. Ah, yes. As I mentioned earlier, it's looking like Twilight's planned school is going to be her enduring legacy for the future. Princess Luna's pet project has always been studying and mapping the night sky, and the health and happiness of our people will always be a credit to everything you do, Celestia, Cadance explained, before raising her prosthetic leg to study it. I know that there are people, both here and on Earth, that have suffered just as I have. I want to help them recover something close to their normal lives, just as I have.